So what are you putting in your body?
Testosterone is one thing. Since my 30s, I'm doing TRT. I'm taking GLP-1s because I'm kind of stress eater. Like I'm taking DHEA, a hormone-like substance. I do one medical drug for sleep, which is called Q-Vivic. I have not tried any recreational drug except of coffee. Yeah. And psychedelics, but that's another topic for later.
We'll get to that in a sec, but... Christian Angermayer, welcome to Interesting Times.
Thank you for having me.
So recently, you probably heard about this, the Pope put out an encyclical, a big document on artificial intelligence. And one of the most striking passages in that document was a critique of what the Pope called transhumanism, which is basically you could define as the idea that a lot of the fundamental constraints that human beings face, aging, illness, mental suffering, maybe even mortality itself, are things that eventually technology, drugs, science can help us overcome. And I think that made me want to talk to you because you're an advocate of what you call the next human agenda, which includes enhancing human athletic performance, using psychedelics to alter human consciousness, and figuring out just maybe how to extend the human lifespan. And I'm interested in all this practically, just how it might change the world. I'm also personally interested in figuring out where I draw the line between breakthroughs that make us healthier and fitter and breakthroughs where I might be on the Pope's more skeptical side. So tell me first, what is the next human agenda, and how would you define your own philosophy?
I used to actually use the word transhumanism, then I realized that people have a negative reaction. And I think because they also wrongly not understand it, but I think the association is, and again, I haven't read the encyclica yet, so I want to, but my gut feeling is that he falls sort of in the same trap that transhumanism makes people think, oh, we're humans now, and then we're something else, because that's obviously the Latin word trans, and that creates a counter reaction, which I understand because that's not what I want to say. So right. I actually started using the word, which is now also very funny because like it's used in another funny context, the maxing, like, but it's kind of like
maxing.
Human
maximization.
Maxing. It's just like, I don't think we should become something different because I think humans are awesome, but like, I think we can maximize the potential which is already in us. So to your question, what we define as next human agenda is like using technology, science, and progress to really maximize both our physical appearance, our life, because it can also be something outside of us. Like I think, for example, AI and robotics will definitely minimize the need for human labor. So we, in a positive way, a lot of people are frightened by that. But if you think it through, I think it can be a very sort of much more human society actually, because the question is, are we really meant to work like 10 hours a day? Is this really human? Like, isn't human be more like with friends and sort of being a social sort of animal? So anyway, so in many ways, I think technology will both help us explore and sort of, improve something. So just like add on, on our body and mind and on the world sort of around us. So in short, I'm a very optimistic person where science and technology leads us.
So give me just a couple examples of the kinds of things that you're invested in or involved in this space, and then we'll drill down into some of the subjects.
Well, the favorite one is always really psychedelics. Like that's what I think is like with a narrow view, they have the potential to really change the way how we treat mental health issues, which already is huge. And it's only growing because I think humans are very anti-change, and we will actually in the next 10 years go through the biggest change humanity in the shortest period of time had ever to do it, and this will create a lot of fear. And I think psychedelics can actually help sort of really guide people or help them adjust humanity to sort of a radically different future. So psychedelics is one thing. I started two very successful longevity companies, so where we work really in slowing down and ultimately reversing of what we colloquially call aging, which is not a single disease, but like is more complex. We're doing a lot in AI and robotics. We're doing, but also a lot in sports. Why sports? Because I believe, again, I cannot see differently, like that AI and robotics will massively reduce the need for human labor. I can totally see a very positive society, because I think that sort of attachment we have to we must have a job is kind of a narrative. Yes, we gave it to ourselves as humanity over the last 8,000 years because it was holding society together. But if you go to an individual factory worker in China and would say, hey, do you want to have kind of the same quality of life and half of the work? This person will say, yeah, like tomorrow.
Right.
Again,
and then play becomes more important
in that
play,
world? Sport, entertainment, social stuff. I always say, if I look at our spectrum, we have 3 tech and biotech areas. It's biotech with a focus on longevity and mental health. Then we do a lot in fintech and crypto, and then deep tech, which is space tech, AI, robotics, that kind of stuff. And then we have the 2 flip sides, or the 2 other sides, like the physical ones, which is sports, entertainment, and hospitality. And we also do a bit in natural resources, mostly in those natural resources which are sort of used then for AI, from uranium, because I believe AI will only increase the need for power, to copper and stuff like that.
All right, so let's talk about what I think is the highest profile way that listeners might have encountered what you're working on recently. And this is the enhanced games, which is a mildly controversial, let's say, sports competition billed as an alternative to the Olympics. And it encourages the use of legal performance-enhancing drugs, which obviously the Olympics do not. The inaugural games happened last month in Las Vegas, and we're going to talk about what happened there. But first, just tell me the big vision and the pitch for the enhanced games.
You said it pretty well. Like, the games itself are a sporting event which at the beginning had sort of similar, or has and will always have similar events like the Olympics. We started with swimming, running, and weightlifting, and with the big difference that we allow, I want to phrase it even better, medically approved performance-enhancing drugs. So my simple view is that neither I should be the arbiter what is allowed and not, nor should be WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and the IOC together. We have actually an amazing agency which is very neutral, which is very scientific, and that's the FDA. So what we do at the Enhanced Games, we say everything which is FDA approved is fair game. Everything which is not FDA approved is not allowed as well. So that's our rule.
Can you give an example, just for people who know about this in the most general steroids in baseball kind of way, of what's something that falls on the approved side and what's something that falls on the non-approved side?
So what we allow, testosterone. Yeah, testosterone is medically approved, but you do it under medical supervision with our doctors together, because we really prioritize health, not like rules or random rules like the IOC does. So if you want to be an athlete in that Olympic world, or a soccer player, whatever, you sign a personal contract and say, look, I adhere to the WADA list.
What is WADA?
WADA is World Anti-Doping Agency.
Okay.
So what we are saying is, we have a different rule set, and we just have a different arbiter, which in our case is the FDA. You also have to stick to their rules. You cannot take crystal meth in the Enhanced Games, but you can take testosterone. That's why when a lot of people call us the doping games, it's nonsensical, because like in our case, they don't break rules because we have a different rule set. They adhere to our rule set.
But you paid them too, right?
Exactly.
Like that's the other
And that's
difference.
the real reason. The real reason why the IOC hates us is not the doping.
I'm sure that they hate you.
But it's not the doping. It's like they treat the athletes like props, like tools. But the heart and soul of the sports are the athletes. Yeah. And not paying them is perverse. Like it's just like not right, morally not right. Yeah. And the day after we made that point and said we're paying them in a proper way, the IOC president was literally asked if she believes in athletes should get paid, and she, in the most cold-hearted way, she was just like,
I don't believe in paying athletes, and I come from a small country. I came from a sport that doesn't necessarily pay athletes very well, and I still don't believe we should be paying athletes at the Olympic Games.
I was like, wow.
So let's talk. So you said the day after. Let's talk about the day after and what actually happened at the games and the narrative around it, which I'm sure that you have some strong feelings on, right? But basically, one athlete on performance-enhancing drugs broke a world record.
Stroke for stroke, proud, Colombic, proud world record, 20-point record!
Nobody performed like Secretariat at the Belmont, relative to other athletes. 3 athletes who competed clean, I think, won their events. And that has led a lot of people to say, well, this was a flop. Because for it to succeed, you would have to show that you were actually radically enhancing human athletic performance. And it seems like you didn't.
We did, but like I acknowledge, by the way, that's, again, I love to talk about controversy. By the way, the great thing is with a sports event, every single controversy is good. Like we measured the days, the event itself and the days around it, and we reached more than 1 billion original people, which is an insane number. Like 1/8 of the world population have watched a clip, not the whole thing, but a clip, something from the Enhanced Games, which I think is for a first-time sport event is insane. So actually, to finish the answer, what you said, what you questioned before, and that's then the answer also for this one, for the controversy with was it a flop or not, is like we had a very mixed group of athletes, and we wanted it like that, but we didn't maybe perfectly communicate that, because we had kind of 3 groups of athletes. We had natural ones, which I wanted, like Hunter Armstrong, a swimmer, to kind of a little bit poke it, like, look, show us your cards. Do you really want to expel them? So I wanted that group. So then the second group we had was a little bit older athletes in their 30s. They were never out to break world records. They were actually racing against themselves. But that is, I think, in the big...
To show resilience.
Well, right. and show that we can reverse time. Because like that is in what we want to discuss here, the big topic of enhancements. Like for you and me, and everybody in this building, nobody here with the best enhancements in the world will ever break a world record. Think about it. Breaking a world record is so elusive. If you break a world record, that means you're better than 8 billion people. But like for you and me, much more relatable is to say, wow, there is an athlete in their 30s, or hopefully next year I want to have some athletes in their 40s and 50s, and they are better than they had been in their prime. And take Megan Romano, mid-30s.
What kind of athlete
Swimming.
is she? Swimming.
Yeah. And she was like very sort of famous in swimming in America, the American darling. And she was out there to break her own best time, which made her famous like 12 and a half years ago. And she did it. Think about what that tells you. Like a 35-year-old with enhancements is a better version of themselves than they were at the peak of their career 12 and a half years ago.
What was she taking? Just general... or
hormones, like
right.
So we can also talk about like the details, why we're thinking about it, why we're not doing a recipe for everybody.
So you're not disclosing exactly.
We did the groups of drugs athletes are taking.
Okay, but not for each athlete.
Yeah, but the third group is, so first group is natural athletes. Second group is
older athletes.
Older athletes. Again, older is like 35, right. But
younger than me. Yeah,
but four athletes out of their prime, retired, and then the third one is athlete like Christian, who is in his prime, one of the best swimmers in the world, and he got enhanced and he broke the world record. So these are the 3 categories. And what we were not good, hindsight, is to really message that and say, look, this is now a race where a world record can be broken because there is a prime athlete in his prime and he's enhanced.
So in a sense then, this for those of us who are not Olympic level athletes or likely to become it, this becomes a larger advertisement for a world where you normalize testosterone replacement and other things across the life cycle as just sort of what a normal person does. Is that the goal?
Exactly. So we want to first of all break the taboo and show that enhancements, if and when done medically, with medical substances, with a doctor together, can be very positive for you. And that they can be very positive for everybody. So, and then I want to entice people to think about it, like, what is the best version of yourself? And that, by the way, can be a subjective answer. You might say, you're fine. This is the best version of you. Lucky you if you think that. Yeah. So, but I also would say...
Not everyone can be so fortunate, I understand.
Exactly. But maybe you would say, you know what? I'm 99% there, but the 1% I would like... By the way, and this doesn't need to be like, obviously, everybody thinks now about... sort of performance and like looks because sports, but like that's only the start. Yes, weight loss, muscle, whatever. But you have hair growth. But you have like sexual.
You're cutting me to the quick.
No, it's sexual appetite. I don't want to do it. Okay, like you have more sex. You want to feel more. Do you want to be smarter? By the way, like you're a journalist. Like you want to maybe read more, maybe read longer, maybe think more. Like so. I think, and that is sort of what we had at the very beginning, I think we should be allowed, and not just allow, we should endorse, that's what I'm doing with the enhanced games, allow humans to maximize their potential with the help of science, because we're doing that since thousands of years. It's just like, we're just feeling a little bit weird at the moment because it's medical drugs we put in our body, but like...
And it's this, and it's the scale and diversity of things, right? So like if you're offered as an enhancement, caffeine and a few other substances, then you have some sense of like, well, I can go online and, now I guess I'll go online and ask Claude, right, to tell me about the risks and benefits of caffeine, how many cups a day and so on, right? But the world you're in, and, it's a world of, yes, medications that are FDA approved, but sometimes they're FDA approved for particular conditions, right?
But still,
it's the world, just that you could respond, but it's also the world of the supplements that are sold without FDA approval, that are legal, that they don't have, let's say, an incredibly intense scientific grounding. So you present people with, here are these set of drugs, these set of supplements, there's hundreds of them, there's thousands of them, and people, on the one hand, might be sort of baffled by all the choices. On the other hand, they also might worry that you, Christian Angermayer, are not able to tell them with certainty, like, what are the long-term risks of this or that, right? How do you think about that?
It's the opposite. I really...
Okay, good.
It's good with talking, but
yes.
Because, I want to actually get across the opposite.
Yes.
So let's go one step back. What I fear is a negative word, but if you look at the... But what I think is not right. Like, the funny thing with the enhanced games is, we're kind of getting attacked a little bit from both sides. We're going to get attacked from, I expected that, from the IOC, but then there is the other side at the moment, which is like, let's call it, and I don't want to call out single people, but like looks maxers. Like, there's so much bullshit online. Yeah. So I'm watching that as a half a scientist.
Wait, are the looks maxers attacking you?
No, but like, these are the ones who expected, why didn't they allow anything? Like, why didn't they put the people on crazy stuff and then let's see if they can fly, literally? Like, so and what I hope where the world is going is like, why I mentioned these looks maxers, there is a clear demand positively. I would almost say it's a cry for help of the consumer that people want to improve their life with science. And by the way, the positive cry for help, or the positive show of demand, are all these GLPs, like all the weight loss drugs,
yes,
like Mounjaro, Ozempic. By the way, last year they made more revenues than all the AI companies together. So, and by the way, more than 50% of the people who are using these weight loss drugs are not using it for what they clinically meant. They meant for diabetes and clinically obese people. I'm on a GLP-1. Yeah. Why? Because it's outsourced discipline. I'm not clinically obese, hopefully. So
what is the cry for help? You just said there's a cry for help. Is the cry for...
The cry for help is many. The positive thing is that now we have one category, which is the weight loss drugs, and look, like it's like biggest business out there.
People want them. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you go online in all these looks maxing things, and they debating things, and it's literally it's that people want the kind of optimization that you get from GLP-1s, and they want it in other areas. In other areas.
Got it. Yeah.
Exactly. They wanna have more muscles, they wanna have more sex, they wanna have more fun when they go out and party, whatever they want. And now we can decide as society that we ridicule that, and what then happens that we have the more fringes, let's say it neutrally, who
people are breaking their jaws,
who recommend very crazy stuff.
You don't recommend jaw breaking.
I do not recommend
to attain what you have.
So, but what I'm saying is there is this demand, and I want to fill it scientifically. And we have these amazing agencies. The FDA is a great institution. They really have a very high bar. I can tell you, doing drug development since 28 years, it's a very high bar. And my view is, let's use stuff which has already gone through that high bar, which, by the way, again, I want to say it again, because you insinuated, we don't know the risk. We do know the risk, because that is...
To be clear, we know risks of things that have passed the FDA process, hopefully. I was also referencing, though, just the world of supplements, herbal cocktails, these kind of things, which I should say, these include things that I myself have taken, not for looks maxing, but I had a period of my life when I had a severe chronic illness, and so I just sort of wandered in the world of non-FDA approved stuff. So I have an appreciation for what it can do, for example, but we also don't know a lot about what it does, right?
For some we do and don't. And again, I want to be also the trusted source.
Let's get back to self-improvement. So I mentioned that I I took some weird supplements I've taken some weird supplements
Happy
in the
to go
course of
through
my
it.
in the course of my life. What struck me with those, and these were essentially treatment for infections, right? Things that were supposed to treat infectious diseases. It was always my impression that they did things, but they did things on the margins. It's been my impression as an observer of sort of enhancement, right? It's always seemed to me that like a lot of this stuff falls into those categories. It's like, okay, you take these extra things while you work out and they make your workouts, 1 or 2% more efficient and your bounce back 1 or 2% better and so on. And that's meaningful, right? But it seems different from what Ozempic does. Ozempic is the first time where it's like, it's not like 1% better, it's 10% better and you don't even have to do anything else, right? And that to me seems like just a big change in what sort of, how people think about drugs, pharmaceuticals, and sort of personal enhancement. So first, I wonder if you agree with that. Second, I wonder, I want you to prophesy for a minute and tell me if you think Ozempic is sort of just the first of many things where it has that kind of ease of transformation.
100%. And you're hitting the best point, because that I always tell people is like, they are very healthy supplements. As I said, we offer that as well. But we always have to say, like, and it's you maybe get 5%, whatever, but it is like supplements are like the sort of free sellable ones. They're making you a bit better, which is already great, but they are not a wonder drug. By the way, nothing is a wonder drug. They always predicted that we need to use real medical drugs who have a very tangible effect. And once that happens, once you take Ozempic and you lose like 15%, 20% of your weight, then you're like, wow, I want that. That's great. Yeah. By the way, you get that. Let's take a very simple enhancement drug for men, testosterone. I can tell you should try it out and then report on the podcast.
You've suggested that I
but
have.
It's like I see it also. By the way, I'm very like, we're not selling anything for men. Like we have some, remember, like, which I don't do myself. Yeah.
Right. Well, I want to ask about what you do yourself.
But I can tell you with testosterone, like, it makes you feel like more than 10 years younger as a man. Full stop. We can, with medical drugs which are already available today, we can make a massive improvement in performance, in weight, in appearance, similar to the amounts we see with Ozempic. And what I predict is, because now kind of the ice is broken, every pharma company is like, wow, I want that. I want that revenues. Mm-hmm. And now they're saying or understanding what I'm trying to say since 28 years is like, obviously the market is much bigger if you have a total addressable market, ideally of 100%, than only for cancer. We should always work on cancer, as an industry, but luckily not everybody has cancer. And I always said, why don't we additionally to curing things, the bad stuff, why don't we additionally find things to which more or less everybody wants,
right?
And that race is on now. No, it's weight loss is still the number one, but people are already looking now at muscle growth beyond testosterone.
Right. So you take a pill, you take an injection, and you still have to exercise, but your muscles increase radically without being in the gym.
Yes.
Every
so one of
day.
my private biotech companies is doing exactly that. We're working on a drug. It's the mechanism is called AMPK activator. You actually lose weight and you gain muscles. You still have to train a bit, but much less.
Right.
And then the holy grail would be you don't train at all.
And then
hair loss,
hair,
huge.
Right. So is that fixed? What's the status of hair loss? I've tried not to pay attention to it.
So currently, you can already do a lot with topical versions of finasteride, whatever. But like ideally, you start them when it starts. So in your case, at the moment,
I'm not. Okay, sorry. In a hypothetical case, Christian.
At the moment, you would still need to, if you have lost a lot of hair already, get the transplant and make sure it doesn't fall out.
Okay, but so we don't have the regrowth.
But there are drugs
yet.
in development and actually late stage, not from us, like which do that is exactly. So I would say give it 5 years, and there will be a hair regrowth drug on the market. By the way, another huge thing will be sex. Yeah, actually, by the way, if you want to see it like that, Viagra was actually the very first best-selling.
Right. That's a good example.
We just didn't call it like that, but it is. And then came Ozempic. But now it's like, what's the next? Like one of my favorite companies in our portfolio, in our biotech portfolio, is a company called Cadence, not listed. They work on premature ejaculation, which happens to more people than you think.
Sorry. Go on.
So,
Yes.
And I think it's 30 seconds. I can't relate. But what we found out, so we actually really out to cure that. Yeah. And the drug we have in late stage is giving those men affected more. But then we found out in the healthy group.
Sorry, this is very serious.
It's very serious.
I'm
Like, by the way, it's going to be, I tell you, we're going to be
Yep.
back and it's going to be a huge market.
Yep.
And by the way, practically so far, no big side effects. So that is like, sex is a big thing. And then by the way, my number one is like happiness. What I'm trying to get across is like, we have some illnesses, and that's how the whole pharma world thinks so far, which are black and white, and where it's very clear, having cancer is bad. It's not the standard. Curing it means bringing you back to normal, and that's it. Like there's no enhancement. Yeah, the same having a viral infection, having a bacterial infection. It's not normal. Let's cure it. You're back to normal. But there is so many subjective things, and this is for me is looks, happiness, sex, intelligence.
What do you think women want in this landscape? In terms of like, we've been talking about male pattern baldness and erectile dysfunction. Like, just give me an example of the female market.
But saying one thing is like, I can give you examples which a lot of women tell me, but I don't even want to generalize because my whole message is it's up to you. And a lot of people think this is pushing people more in body conformity. I think in the moment we make it easy to achieve, I think the world will go more diverse. So I think then, because like if you go
because right now temporarily, right, there is the phenomenon of like the Jenner family who all seem to have ended up with the same face, right? There's certain convergences in looks that you get under these conditions.
Because it's still hard to access because it's expensive. Because their looks is not their look is not therapeutic use of drugs. Their use is operational, which is very expensive. But if that would be available to everybody, I don't think we all want to look the same. You don't think there would
be convergence?
No, I'm thinking about that a lot because like I love history, and if you go into history, what always the beauty standard of each time was what was the hardest to get. A lot of the beauty standards are indirectly signaling that you have money because they allow practically what you're signaling. If I'm very trained, if I'm thin, whatever, I have the time to do that. And so in the medieval ages, for example, the beauty standard was very pale. Yep. Why? Because the peasants had to work outside, so they were very tanned. So only the rich ladies could stay behind their castles and be very pale. So being pale was the unobtainable.
And then being on the beach becomes the thing that rich people do, and tan,
exactly.
And it switches.
So and the cool thing is,
but there's still a standard, right? I mean, human beings are mimetic, right? It's just hard for me.
Yes, but what I'm saying is like, what happens if we making everything fairly easy, is that not actually opening up the window because people are not seeing it as something unobtainable? So coming to women, though, to your question, like, first of all, sex. By the way, it's very unfair. Men at least have Viagra. Yeah. Women have not really something. So to so many women I'm talking to are like, hey, I want to feel pleasure. And it's always, by the way, connected women's health and sort of well-being. And the number one thing they're all citing is like menopause sucks. Yeah. And we want also something for sexual pleasure, which we don't have at the moment. Women don't have.
With menopause, does that include extending fertile years? Like how?
Both. Like some want that. Again, we have a biotech company which is working on that. Yeah. But it can also be like, okay, you're not fertile anymore, but you don't have all the downsides going through menopause.
Right. And how do you get to mass access for this stuff? If it is, it's a marketplace.
What Ozempic done, bringing it to FDA so that people don't try sketchy shit they're ordering from China. Yeah, and because they heard it from an influencer, doing the very proper.
So no Chinese peptides, only all American peptides.
By the way, yes, because like it's also
European Union peptides.
So you need to know the science, and then obviously you need to know that what you ordered is what you want to have. Like, and by the way, for the peptide market, it's a long story because, like, again, there I'm fairly conservative. Like, I think, like, first of all, there are peptides, which are already FDA approved. I'm actually hoping they're not going overboard because there's a lot of stuff on it which I would call interesting. So I would like to learn more in terms of, I would like to see more science, but I would not put it in my body. Yeah, and that's where we as Enhanced Games at least, or Enhanced, want to draw the line. And that's what I want to message all the time. Like, I want to give people the freedom because they deserve it, but freedom only makes sense if you have knowledge, otherwise it's idiocy.
So what are you putting in your body?
So the sentence before, but my whole message is it's scientific and you have to do it with a doctor, because what is right for me,
Right.
even if now I'm 48, even if a 48-year-old man is listening saying, even for that person, meaning he can maybe take
Right.
the closest sort of
Right.
comparison.
Well, we're
disclaimer
gonna
is-
imagine this. This is we're watching television, and this conversation comes with the immense bar at the bottom of the
Only go
screen,
to your doctor.
the
I want
endless
you- yeah.
disclaimers. But
Because, for example-
and you don't have to tell me everything. Just give
No, I'm
give me a sense
there's
of your
nothing
regimen.
I wouldn't tell
Just-
you. Like,
okay, good.
I'm
Give
very
me-
open book. So testosterone is one thing.
Right.
Since my 30s, I'm doing TRT. By the way, very, very mild. What I'm doing is I know exactly where my testosterone level was at 30, and I'm keeping it there. And by the way, I don't even think about it, but when I talk to friends who are like going to the gym when they're 48 and they're training and they have sore muscles, whatever, like for days, I was like, I don't have that. I'm really training exactly the same way and it feels the same way. So then I'm taking GLP-1s because I'm kind of stress eater. Like, and by the way, even if I have good stress, even if I have a fun day, if I'm busy, I'm like, oh, here's a cookie, there's a cookie. Yeah, and then I gain weight. Yeah, and just...
Happens to all of us.
But GLP-1s switched it off. I haven't eaten today because I was busy, but now I don't, because like, I just like...
Do you find that they remove any other any non-food compulsions? Like, do you
Not
feel like
for
they've
me,
changed
yes.
your personality
It's a
in other
good
ways?
point. Not for me.
Yep.
Yeah. But again, I come back. That's why I say do it with a doctor and like, observe yourself. Like, and so there is the side effect people report. By the way, sometimes it's a happy side effect because
people will say I'm no longer addicted to scrolling social media on my
but
phone.
Then when there are other,
pick a hypothetical problem.
Unfortunately, it doesn't do that for me. And I am addicted to that. Like I'm trying. My partner will say yes, he is. Like it doesn't work for him. It just, for me, it does what it shall do. It just reduces my craving or my stupid like, oh, I'm eating a cookie. So I have that. I'm taking DHEA, which is a hormone-like substance. I'm taking pregnenolone. I'm taking actually a lot of things for sleep because, like, also let me say, sorry, we're jumping, but like, people always want to know from me, and this is exactly what we're debating now, is like, what's the medications we can take? Yeah, it all just makes sense if you cover your basics, and the basics are 5 things in life for health, and sleep is the number one. Get your sleep in order. Second is social relations. Super cheap and super hard at the same time. Have a great life, enjoy it, have friends, have family. Third one is no drugs. You laugh now, but it's like coming from me, but like I hate drugs, by the way, the negative version of it. Yeah. And I think the number one drug which should not be even allowed is alcohol. It destroys everything. Alcohol is scientifically the worst, and it's spiritually a path to hell. That's my view. Yeah. I've never touched it, and I will never. Yeah. And by the way,
marijuana.
I have not touched it. I would not. Makes you dumb. Yeah. There are medical use cases, but again, by the way, also, so everything is also always a trade-off. If I would have a medical use case with marijuana help, maybe I would do it. But I clearly see the side effects, which is, especially when you're younger, by the way, it does, if you do it a lot, reduce a little bit your intellect for life. Why would I fucking do that? Like, it's like, yeah, so I have not tried any recreational drug except of coffee. Yeah. And psychedelics, but that's another topic.
We'll get to that in a sec.
So, but everything else I think is bad. So don't touch it. No alcohol, no cigarettes, no smoking, no more. So then go to the gym 2-3 times a week, do a little bit of cardio, do a little bit of weight training, and then food intake. Like be mindful of that as well, because we like talking always about the risks of drug, and at the same time people are like, sugar is super bad for you. Like so have a Mediterranean diet. So these are the 5 basics, and they, I would say, account for 70 or 80% of your well-being, aging, whatever. And if you cover those basics, then actually enhancements add on. That's just like the concept. Like, so I do a lot of supplements actually for sleep to improve that. I do one medical drug for sleep, which is called QVIVIC, that regulates the wake sleep mechanism. So at the moment you have orexin drugs which promote sleep, like this said QVIVIC, and the great thing is they give you more deep sleep. That's what you really want.
You need core,
And interestingly, in older people, it might actually reduce the risk for dementia and Alzheimer, which is always a theory I believed in, is that older people unfortunately get less and less deep sleep in average. So it was always a hypothesis I was looking at, is like, oh, if we give people more deep sleep, could that be prevented? And it seems to be. So I'm taking that. What did I forget? You mentioned Alzheimer's,
then take me into the longevity debate and how you think about that, right? Because as, just as prior to Ozempic, I had the sense that, lots of interventions made a difference on the margins, and then Ozempic comes along and seems to make a really big difference. My impression of all of the debates about longevity and anti-aging stuff at this moment is that people are doing, 17 different supplements and avoiding direct sunlight and so on. And in the end, maybe it's going to add, 13 months to their average lifespan or something. Now, maybe that's wrong, but that's my impression. Do you have an expectation that you are doing or will be doing things that will actually add meaningfully to what your lifespan would be, even if you were healthy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
first of all, you're right. At the moment, there is nothing you can take so that in average, again, there could always be the outlier statistics, but like there is nothing which would make people live 10 years longer.
Right.
Yeah. But it's going to come. So at the moment, give you a different view, like the two things. A, let's start like already aging better, having the same. So we need to dissect life expectancy. So how long do we live? And then quality of life. So we have already, that's what we just talked about. The quality of life, I think, can be easily already now for every person on the planet improved like 10 years plus. And then at the same time, I think now in the future, like in the next 10 years, we're gonna see breakthroughs also in life expectancy. So try to be alive. Yeah, by the way, the number one...
If you want the extra, right. And
one
whether,
thing maybe, which is, again, just a practical thing, because it's not a medication, the number one thing at the moment is checkups. I'm doing a blood cancer screening, that you get your blood drawn, and I'm doing every 3 months. I may be a little bit obsessive.
That's a little bit. I mean, I did just get a colonoscopy, so
great.
I feel
virtuous.
Years. I feel virtuous for that, but I am not. I'm not good at keeping up with checkups for reasons that I want to get into at the end. But now I want to ask about psychedelics. Where does the mind and consciousness alteration fit into this?
In so many ways. Like first of all, hopefully I get it across that I really think this was the beginning of our debate. Like, I think life is awesome. Yeah, it's exciting.
We're not having a debate.
No, exactly.
This is.
I know, but I just want to say, and that's where my point comes. But I realized I had this luck, literally since I'm alive, and I really, really credit my parents. I'm coming from this very small farm village. Like, I'm always fairly happy. It doesn't mean that I have bad days, but like my baseline is happy. And I realized that is not normal. And I think it's very sad. Life is awesome, but obviously you need to be happy to enjoy it and healthy. But like we covered the health part, but life without happiness is not good. Like so that's why the baseline of psychedelics is like they have the potential to really massively, massively improve the mental health of people who have a medical issue, which is a lot. Again, from
meaning depression,
anxiety,
PTSD,
addiction.
But in this terrain, just to be clear, we're not in the realm of things that are all FDA approved, right? This is...
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because the amazing thing is so I'm saying that since 10 years, but I always had to add, we're going to prove that out. So I started 2 companies, Atai and Compass, both are listed. Both companies together raised more than $1.5 billion. I put in 100 million of my own capital, more than. And now we're there. So Compass has released phase 3 data, which is the last final stage.
For which?
For treatment-resistant depression, but then they have...
With which psychedelic?
Compass is psilocybin.
Okay.
Which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. And then Atai is doing all the other psychedelics. We just had phase 2B data for 5-MeO-DMT, which was maybe the best data set in neuroscience since like 30 years. It's amazing.
For which,
5-MeO-DMT, which is another psychedelic. So they have several psychedelics.
Is that equivalent to the DMT that is in like ayahuasca? What's the connection?
So it's a very colloquially said, it's a stronger version. It's a different molecule. It's in the same family.
Okay, it's in the same family.
We also do DMT. So Atai is doing 5-MeO-DMT, which is actually what people call colloquially the toad thing, like if you have heard it.
Yes.
Yeah, then we do DMT, which is colloquially what you take when you do ayahuasca.
But you can do DMT without doing ayahuasca.
And actually we do it buccal, which is then a much shorter trip. It's because I think if you do it medically, in the medical system, the shorter the better, because I have to add for psychedelics, is I believe psychedelics should be not only medically approved, but they only should be taken with a clinician together. So it's a narrower approval. Like, for example, what we discussed so far are prescription drugs. You have to go to a doctor, consult, but then testosterone you can take home or get an injection or whatever. But like psychedelics, my vision, and also where we agree because the FDA has the same vision, is they should be used only with a clinician together, because the session can be very intense.
Yes, I've heard that.
And you should do it with somebody who's sort of educated, and that's how it unfolds the biggest the therapy effect. But long story short, psychedelics are about to be approved. You're gonna see psilocybin, active ingredient magic mushrooms. You can take it with your doctor next year. It's gonna happen now. There was just a presidential order which kind of just stated the obvious, because it wasn't needed, actually, a different topic. And all the other psychedelics we're developing, DMT, 5-MeO, DMT, ibogaine, a new version of MDMA, are gonna come, I would say, over the next 3 to 5 years to market.
And which are the ones that you have taken yourself, or that you take now?
So I do regularly psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. Regularly means I do it once, maximum twice a year, with a therapist together in a country where it's already legal. So I do it the proper way, how it will be in the United States, hopefully next year, end of this year, next year. So I have done 5-MeO DMT, I've done DMT, I've actually done our entire pipeline except of ibogaine.
All right, so what happens to you when you do psilocybin?
So that's always the most complicated question.
Yes. Well, I'm going to ask about DMT too, but I want to ask about both. As someone who has never taken either and finds the literature on them very interesting.
Can I give you two answers? I give you the personal one second, I give you the medical one, and I try to make it simplified medical one. All the psychedelics, one of the big effects is we have a part of our brain where our consciousness seems to be created, at least our sense of ego. Consciousness is already a tricky term, because that's now what I'm doing. I'm going through a minefield of tricky terms.
Sense of the boundaries of the self.
And ego. Ego in not an somebody has a big ego, but like ego in like your sense of self. And that default mode network is reduced to really shut down. And the initial reaction of people is, oh, who am I when my ego is gone? And then the interesting answer is, and I can try to make it very neutral, and I can give you my Christian answer, because I'm personally very spiritual religious, which is I want to make a clear divide. I can give you, and that's the great thing with psychedelics. We can go through FDA and don't need to use the word God and soul and all of that, because
this is a safe space for using those words.
I like it. I'm just always making clear there are certain things we know about psychedelics, and the great thing is we know that much that is so easily going to be FDA approved. Because, by the way, side note, also the side effect profile is super benign. Like, people have a headache, vomiting. There are some people have a higher heart rate, but it's all like, I would say, again, I don't want to be too like easygoing, because everything has side effects and everything is like a trade-off. If you drink coffee, your body will display some side effects. You just know them. But like, I would say what we've shown is like they have mild side effects.
Right. Yeah. But back to the feeling itself.
Yes.
So you have your sense of ego and self weakens.
And then something else is there. Yeah. And you can call it your subconsciousness, you can call it your soul, your inner voice, whatever. But so your brain or your head is not empty, so to say. And that is the moment which allows you to work through whatever the reason for your mental health issue is. For me, again, it's more like my personal opinion. Because I'm chairman also of a biotech company publicly, but like my personal opinion is like there are certain root causes, is my belief, for mental health issues. Like trauma is a very sort of widely talked about, but there's also others like loss of connections, grieving, just like getting obsessed with negativity in your life. And depending what the root cause is, my subjective answer is, the beauty of all psychedelics is they show you the right answer or the right antidote to whatever your root cause is. I give you two examples. Like if people are, and there's so many, by the way, their root cause is the simplest one, and the most common one is they don't even know what makes them happy. Because we're living in a world where we don't embrace that. We don't allow people to explore and communicate and express. And that is one of the biggest group of patients I see throughout all psychedelics. They go in a psychedelic trip and they come out and they're like, I know now what I want and that I deserve it and I should do it.
But you're doing this not all the time, but frequently, right? So are you
once or twice a year?
That but so I think is the right cadence. Resetting and figuring out like how your true self is changing? Like what is the maintenance effect?
So the maintenance is, by the way, let's start with my first trip. So the great thing with me was, that's why, for me it was very confirmatory. So I went into that and I came out of it, was like, okay, the first measure, the only two things, again, why I did this whole pre-thing, because like, it sounds so banal. Like everything I'm telling people about how psychedelics work and what psychedelics teach you, you can read a Deepak Chopra book. By the way, you can talk to your parents. You can also read the Bible. Like we have all these things out there which show us how to lead a good, happy life. In Germany, just say it goes in the right ear and goes out the left ear, meaning you don't listen to it truly. And on psychedelics is because your ego is reduced, it's like you experience these kind of truth at a very, very deep, absolute level, and you come out of it and you have the courage to live according to it. So in my case, though, it was very confirmatory.
What was the revelation of your first trip?
Very simple. I'm doing exactly what I love. I'm blessed, like I structure. By the way, and why? Because I always structured my life. Why would I do anything different? I don't even understand it, how people can do things they don't love, because then don't do it. Yeah, and now people say Christian is very fortunate because he's very successful. No, I decided that very early, and then I became successful because I'm very sure about that. And the second was, though, and it's so cheesy, it's all about love. Like, it's like, yeah, you can have a lot of money. It's, in my case, it's like, I like to build companies. So the message was like, you know, do that.
Right.
But make sure that you have enough time for your parents, because if life goes as normal, they're going to be gone before me, and I have a great relationship to them, and I'm so grateful. So I spend more time since then with my parents, like make enough time. Like it's so simple. So people might say, okay, I could have told you that without a psychedelic trip, but I want to really get across you experience this on that deep level that you're like, wow, that's it.
So with DMT, right, which is associated with ayahuasca, which is a drug that has a whole sort of shamanic culture that's grown up around it. My understanding, and this is, I'm sure, a crude generalization, is that magic mushrooms, things like them, right, induce some version of this sense of dissolution of self, oneness with the universe, self-knowledge, and so on. DMT, ayahuasca, gives you a more extreme experience where it feels like you are entering a different levels of reality, encountering other entities, beings. People talk about angels, people talk about the machine elves, which people listening can Google if they're interested in. And yeah, just have a sense that's more like they are leaving this plane and entering another plane. I'm curious, first, is that your experience? And second, there's a lot of people who have what you might call kind of hellish experiences, right? And especially in that, like, that they're plunged into a sort of purgatorial landscape where they feel like they're cut off from God and reality and so on. Is my reading accurate, basically?
Yes and no, because there's many points in it which all we need to go dissect, because it's many things. Like, so first of all, let's stay with DMT. Like, so there is, when people drink DMT, and that's what it's called, ayahuasca. Yeah, it's a very, very different sort of experience. It's up to 8 hours, whatever. When I say we do DMT, we do it buccal. So meaning it's only
in your cheek.
In your cheek. Yeah. It could be also intranasal. It's anything transmucosal. Mm-hmm. Then it's a much faster experience. It's from clinical start to end around about 2 hours, and it's very different from ayahuasca. So while it's the same ingredient, just saying, like, so ayahuasca is very different.
What is that experience? How is that experience different from magic mushrooms?
So that's the second answer. Is, by the way, a lot of people who make the differentiation you just made and say, oh, under DMT, ayahuasca, so oral as a drinking version or transmucosal version, or 5-MeO DMT, you see entities, you go through literally another plane of existence, if you want to say it like that, or perceived. And mushrooms is more gentle. Most of them have done mushrooms recreationally, so they take fairly little. So I always ask people, when you had this experience, were you able to walk and speak properly? Most people say, kind of, I was on a beach. I was like, hey, it was great, by the way, great for you. I did it on a beach, like in a country where it's legal. But it's a mild dose. Yeah, so the therapy dose is actually, they're much closer together. So in the therapeutic dose of psilocybin, people also have a very spiritual experience. So the nuance is different, but like they're much closer together when what you compared now, a very strong DMT dose to a very recreational psilocybin dose.
But tell me what just tell me what happens. Like what is it? So if you take the therapeutic dose of magic mushrooms, or you're taking this more condensed dose of DMT, do you feel like you're on another plane of existence?
So let's just, like, for the sake of compliance, like, let's say we're leaving science now, because science is so we're coming now to my personal opinion. Yeah. So I do believe that psychedelics are opening up our, again, I'm only struggling because, like, I know when I use religious terms, then maybe religion is the one thing we don't think a lot about it, but it's very loaded. If I use the word God or soul, everybody has a few, and it's not necessarily what I want to say with it. I'm just giving that also as a disclaimer. So, but like, I do think psychedelics.
But it's what I want to hear about.
Yeah, no, and I'm happy to hear. I'm just trying to make it most accurate and not repel people.
Right. Well, and you just, the disclaimer would be, you think people will have experiences and get these results, even if they think and are sure that it's all happening just inside their heads, right?
Yes, that's what we've proven. But when I read the what we also ask, like the personal questionnaires, whatever, of the patients, this is all a very spiritual experience.
Right.
Some people, by the way, might not call it like that. I have a friend who's actually, big shout out, because he was my first sort of shaman, like in my very first trip. He's he would call himself, although he does psychedelics, really an atheist. But then when I talk to him, he's like, you're not an atheist. Like, you just don't like the word, you like religious. Like, you believe in something bigger. Like, I think there is no real atheist, by the way, or very, very little. And like, I almost would claim, like, you cannot be a real atheist after you took psychedelics, because everybody comes out and has these, let's call it spiritual for now, religious, very deep experience. That there is more.
And there's data on this, as I understand it, that at least with what I've read about DMT, it is similar to the data on near-death experiences, where you have a substantial number of people where they do a study and they say, they go in, are you an atheist or materialist? And they say yes, going in. And there is, not with everyone, maybe not with your friend, right? But there is often this sort of change of metaphysical perspective, right?
He also
has it, right? He just doesn't want to say it, yeah.
But that is what people have. Like, they have a very deep spiritual experience. Like, some people meet entities. Do I personally believe? Yes, because I'm spiritual religious. Like, I believe in.
Have you met entities?
Yes. I especially met God, like, every single time.
So tell me what that was like.
It's undescribable, because that is no, by the way, suddenly,
Sir, this is a podcast. Everything is describable.
Yes, I'm trying. I just give it the word that it is undescribable.
Yeah.
Because that is the nature of God.
Right.
Like,
so this is apophatic theology, which is where the term for when human concepts fail.
Exactly, 100%. Like, you go. The thing is, like, so my guess, by the way, obviously we have to bring it across in a podcast, and you can say you don't want to answer. Have you done it?
No.
So
no, and I'll tell you why in a second.
So why I'm asking is, like, so that's, you're actually a good counterpart, because I'm trying to explain it to somebody, because, like, otherwise people immediately, like, I know what you mean, because, like, everybody has the same experience, but it's practically like you read then the Bible, where it's like you can't make a picture of God. It is like that. God is so much bigger, and so much out of our comprehension we have in this incarnation. I also believe we have an eternal soul. I believe we're gonna go forever, and it's just so far out of our comprehension. But on psychedelics, you're going on a state of consciousness which allows you, I would say, to comprehend the nature, and let's maybe use the divine, and to communicate with it. So, and it was the most loving, best experience I've ever had. By the way, not always fun. I can tell you the hardest, like, because people, I want to go with this bad trip. What you said, the hellish ones.
Right. And people report entities that are darker.
So I think a majority of what people would call, let's use the word bad trip, is because they're not prepared for it. So I can give you very sort of where I witnessed very hard story, but like with a very positive ending, and they were good because somebody was sitting next to them and guiding them. If that happens to you at a festival, you might find it was the worst experience you ever had because you like, and it sounds so simple, but I tell you, it's, in psychedelics with set and setting, the way sort of how you are, that you know you're safe, like, and that you're expecting it to a certain degree, and that you have somebody next to you is so that is.
But then you don't really think though that, like, to the extent that you actually believe that this opens doors. You're not just locked into your head having this experience. You're opening a door to the infinite. You don't think that it's possible to open that door and have something dangerous waiting on the other side.
That is one of the best questions because I never had it in a podcast. Yeah. So
well, this is the special thing about interesting times.
So I believe, and it's, by the way, maybe the one question I ask every religious leader I'm meeting is like, how do you make sure, if you're on the religious side of it, again, this is not science, this is not the tie, is like, how do you make sure that you're meeting God and not sort of a misleading entity?
Yes.
Yeah. If you want to simplify it.
I have some concerns about the misleading entities.
So
yes.
I'm thinking about that, by the way, an incredible amount, because like
But you don't think, you don't feel like you've met a misleading entity.
So, the reason is, I think, how do I phrase it? Like, again, this all sounds cheesy for the ones who want to make fun of it, but like, I do believe that ultimately, not just life is good, but God is good. Mm-hmm. And if you go and have a sincere problem, which you're bringing towards God, then he, she, it will always answer. That is my deep sort of religious belief that these psychedelics are meant to open up that. So God gave it to us for a reason. And because God, again, personal belief, because God gave it to us, psychedelics, he wants us to discover him in that way if you're ready for it. That is my spiritual answer. But this is why it's so important to go into it with exactly that intention. This is why if I go back and if the right answer to your question is also to look how have others done it. All religions, Christianity, who used a lot of psychedelics,
that's a separate podcast conversation.
But
we'll let the claim hang there.
All the pagan religions, like whatever, they all the ones who are still out now, like the nature religions in the Amazon, whatever, they all make sure that you go into it with that sort of intention and preparation. And then I think the answer is like, what's the quote in the Bible? Like, if you ask God for something, he will always answer. Right. But if you do it if you kind of ignore the power of these substances, and if you do it in a non-intentional setting, I think you can accidentally meet other entities. But like, I cannot go with that argument to the FDA and say that's my. But
they won't listen to this podcast. Don't worry.
No, and they do. But like, the good thing is I can come to the same conclusion with science.
Right.
And like, a lot of people say I'm a hypocrite because I'm trying to stay in the middle lane. Yeah, I deeply believe these very powerful substances should be available, but I don't believe at all, and especially for psychedelics, that they should be sold in a marijuana shop, because it can go terribly wrong. And I can't give you the scientific answer why it can go wrong, because if you uncover a trauma and you're whatever, then it can make it worse. And I can give you the religious answer that if you go into it without the preparation. So, but if you go into it and you are going it with a pure heart, you know what I mean? Like, it's very, and I'm struggling, and I'm also not a native speaker, but like, if you're going in it like with a good intention, and if the intention is to solve your problem, I think God will be there because he gave us these substances. That is my personal religious belief.
Okay. I really appreciate you answering me directly. And I want to just to sort of bring us to the end, I want to sort of, I guess, offer my own Christian reasons for skepticism about these substances that I think connect to some reasons for skepticism about sort of the quest for greater human potential overall. You mentioned earlier, you said something like, the message that God is love, it's there in the Bible, and it's there in Deepak Chopra, right? And it's there in Oprah Winfrey and so on. I agree with that. But I think that there's a lot of sort of spiritual thought and practice nowadays that sort of start with the assumption that if you find it in the depths of your soul, it's probably basically good. And I feel like Christianity starts from a somewhat different perspective and says, the depth of your soul is also divided. Human beings are divided. We have an angelic side and we have a fallen, right? We have a fallen side. But then what does this mean, right? For like in his encyclical that I started with, and I know you haven't read it. You don't have to have read it to respond to this, right? But the Pope says something basically like, there's certain kinds of suffering, certain kinds of experiences, embodied experiences of difficulty, heartbreak, sorrow, disease, death itself, right? That human beings are supposed to go through. And again, I should say, I've had Christian friends who have had conversion experiences based on psychedelics. So I'm not denying that they can have positive effects. But as a consistent practice of a culture, you're stepping outside, right? You're sort of leaving the trials of the flesh behind. And then in the same way, everything else that you have talked so eloquently about, right, is a kind of it's like we are sort of escaping it, the suffering, the things we're supposed to go through. We're maxing out, right? And I just worry about human vanity, right? Isn't vanity a problem here? Isn't ego a problem here that you don't necessarily escape just by getting to the depth of yourself? Anyway, that's a ramble.
No, I love it.
Give me a response.
First, and I always wanted to talk about it because there's two answers. Let's come to psychedelics on the enhancement side, on the physical enhancement side.
On the physical side, right.
Yeah. Actually, I thought about it because, by the way, I'm deeply religious, or spiritual. Again, I only say spiritual because I'm Christian, but I kind of think
you have some heterodox ideas,
and I'm coming to the Catholic Church in a second, and especially not to this encyclical because I haven't read it, but to what's missing, because I think what all religions did, by the way, that would be the separate podcast. One sentence, and I'm doing a lot of research there and financing a lot of research. Most religions are built on psychedelics. And what psychedelics tell you, and I can see it, by the way, once you have a psychedelic experience. I read the entire Bible. Yeah, I read Quran, because I'm interested in it. And once you read it with the eye of having done psychedelics, you clearly see where the psychedelic influence is.
No, but wait. No, I can't let that go. Wait, but couldn't that just be that psychedelics give you, through a drug, a spiritual experience that people in the Bible or the Quran or wherever else are getting direct from God? Why does it have to be that they're I agree.
Great. No, hopefully we have a little bit more time because I love this debate. So the discussion, because for example, I financed a very important, I think, very good study, completely different thing, because I believe somewhere we're going to use psychedelics for peace negotiations. Totally, because I think one sentence, because I think it's such an important topic, is one of the things, and we showed it, is in all these conflicts in Israel and Palestine and Rwanda, whatever, is they dehumanizing the other side. So when I talk to politicians at the moment, most of them are they manipulate me. So what we shown with what we did, we had a group of Palestinians and a group of Jews trip together, and they all went in and were like, "Oh, do I come out and gonna give the land away?" That was the manipulative worry they had. What actually happened, which is much more beautiful, I think, they came out and said, "It's such a complicated debate. I want to live here, but I, for the first time, see that the other person is a human with a family, with very basic, he's like me, and they just want to live and make a good life for their family. And I want to find a solution." They didn't find a solution, but I think it was the great answer, because it was not compelling them both sides to leave the land, but it gave them the understanding that there's a human on the other side, which if you read it, you're like, what did they think before?
All right, but let's stay, this is good though. This will sharpen my question. In the New Testament, right, Jesus does want people to have a direct relationship to God, to pray, to call God Father, right? There's clearly a strong thread of mystical experience running through the whole New Testament, right? But how shall I put this? Jesus is not human maxing, right? Like Jesus is incredibly focused on everything he's talking about is giving up your body for other people. This is something I fail at, by the way. I'm not like holding myself up as a paragon of this, but you're giving your possessions away, but you're also sort of giving of your physical form. And I think the worry, whether it's the Pope or me sitting here talking to you now, right, is that there's a combination of maxing of the body and sort of spiritual escape that risks getting away from that fundamental obligation. That's my question. Don't we risk getting away from fundamental obligations? Like just in your examples, right? I've got a lot of kids. If I don't have time to do certain maxing things or even to think about certain maxing things, and I'm not sure that's a bad thing.
So first of all, there's two different answers, by the way, for psychedelics.
Yeah.
Let's call it mind maxing, if you want to call it. And for so I gave you the answers. Like psychedelics, and by the way, to finish that, I think, by the way, I also want to say everything I just said, come back to your question, but like everything I just said, you can actually achieve without psychedelics. By the way, I'm not the one who says, hey, this is the only way. Religions have all developed various techniques, meditation, prayer, whatever. My critique is, and that is, for example, my biggest critique, I would say, as a Catholic, is like they traded away the mystical experience and the direct relationship to God, and also helping people to achieve that, even without psychedelics. I want people to have that because I think that is the core of having a relationship with God, and they traded that away for power and organization. And they made themselves very hollow. And I think that is, so yes, it's important that the Pope says something about AI, but I don't think we need the Pope for that. I want the Pope to give much deeper answers, much more spiritual answers on the condition of being human. And I think they lost it. And it's sad because I think people deeply, deeply need that and long for it, especially in a world which is changing. Again, coming back to that, we need religion. I deeply believe we need that.
Okay, so that's the mind maxing side.
So
now,
on the body
now talk
maxing
about
side,
the body maxing and whether, am I doing something wrong, I maybe, by letting myself get a little bit fat and ignoring my lost hair, but in the service of like trying to be a good journalist and a good husband and father and not have that like be in my mind all the time.
Okay. I'm giving you a personal answer. You asked in terms of you like.
I want a personal answer. Yes.
So you have children. How many?
I have 5 children.
So you have 5 children. How old?
They are anywhere from 15 to 2.
So you want to be there as long as you can. So you're a tiny bit overweight. Is putting a toll on you. It's storing inflammation. It's increasing your risk for a cardiovascular disease.
Yes.
And you have a responsibility, I believe, for the kids you put in this world to be there in a healthy state for them, because I believe in family. So it's kind of, people want to talk.
But maybe not the hair. I can leave the hair alone.
But if it makes you a happier dad, the question is, that's why I'm saying before, like, it's not that I'm saying we all should do that. What I think, there are people who want, if they do X, it makes them happier, and I want them to be happy. Because only if you are happy, you can make other people happy. If you're miserable, you're going to make other people miserable. So be happy, have a connection with God, and be healthy, because that is kind of the basis, and then you can be the good force in life to whoever you want to be there, to your children, to your wife, to your readers, whatever. So it's not a conflict. People always want to talk up that conflict and make it like egocentric, whatever. Not at all. It's like,
but it's a conflict. But it is you would admit it's a conflict for some people. It's why I struggle with it myself. That there is a balance between healing and seeking health, which I think Christians, people who believe in God, are absolutely required to do. But then there's also the perils of vanity, narcissism, and egocentrism that I think, whatever psychedelics may or may not do are sort of carried in the train of personal improvement.
It's like, I hear you again, and I think if some people become narcissistic or very vain, then it's a treatable issue itself, and then I would say go to psychedelics.
Right.
But I don't think that people who just want to be the best version of themselves, that they should be called like that. I give you two. So if you're, because like I never had a podcast where the other side was also Christian, like believer. Like, so I guess you believe the term child of God is an accurate one. Are we God's children? So
yes, with some theological debate behind it, but yes.
But I think sometimes, by the way, that the theological intellectual debate is the wrong one. I think maybe it's the real one. Like maybe you should take things more literally. So I deeply believe, because I was thinking, why do I like biotech so much? And why not even me, like forget about me. Why are we humans so curious? Why do we want to invent? There is this drive, like we literally like zoom out, like we are a very curious, adventurous, innovating species. We have this drive to do that. My personal answer is because that is the divine in us, the part of God. Like if God is has a very creating nature, which we definitely as Christians would say he does, because he created the universe and us, whatever. Isn't it that we have that spark in us and we want to create on a much smaller level? But it's like children imitating you,
yes.
And I think trying to optimize things, but by the way, trying to do any science, whatever, is the divine spark in us. And that's why I think it's inherently good if we're trying to, as I said, become the best version of ourselves. And I don't think there is anything bad in science helping us do that.
I'm very hopeful that this has been the best possible version of this podcast. So, Christian Angermayer, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It was amazing.